Candace Owens is speaking out after a Paris court found 10 people guilty of cyberbullying First Lady Brigitte Macron for stating online that she was actually born a man. Owens wrote on X, quote, "Once again, these headlines are written in a way to deceive the public into believing that Brigitte proved she was a woman. No. France just has cyberbullying laws. In essence, Rachel Dolezal could secure a conviction against people for asserting that she was born white."
Rachel Dolezal's classic. Some of the defendants' posts also compared the 24-year-old age gap between the Macrons to pedophilia and were viewed tens of thousands of times. One of the convicted persons received a 6-month jail sentence, but under French law, it can be served at your home. 8 of them got suspended sentences ranging from 4 to 8 months. All of them will have to undergo cyberbully awareness training. On top of that, the guilty were fined 600 euros each and must contribute around $12,000 to Macron. And 3 of them are banned from using X for 6 months.
The court argued that the repeated publications had cumulative harmful effects. Macron said over the weekend she sued to, quote, set an example against harassment. Owens is facing a defamation lawsuit in the U.S. from the Macrons for making similar claims about that, and Owens has been the most prominent voice spreading this theory that Brigitte Macron was actually born Jean-Michel Chognot, which is the name of her brother.
Reactions abounded on X. Conservative filmmaker Mike Cernovich said they are sending people to jail over this, and British broadcaster Piers Morgan said, "Oh, Candace O, looks like you owe me $300K.
You know, and longtime viewers know, or even recent viewers know, that I do not like Candace Owens at all. However, I share her distrust of the cyberbullying law in France. I think, again, Brigitte Macron is suing her. I'm comfortable with libel, defamation to settle maliciously false claims, and I have no doubt that Candace Owens' claim about her is false, so she's suing her. That's different than having a law that says you can't make harassing statements about a political figure. That's crazy. We would never accept that in our country. But you can't make fun of Trump's hair or his skin color or whatever. It's like, that would be crazy. So I'm totally with her that the cyberbullying law is bad, and the idea of people having their cell phones confiscated or they got to do house arrest because they made fun of the French president's wife, that's crazy. Crazy stuff. France, you're crazy.
So on the less serious mind, I'm like, you know what? If only trolls had to experience this on X, this would be brilliant. Brilliant. I love this type of punishment. But my mind that follows the Constitution and believes in the law of the land knows that in the U.S., this is completely not appropriate. People were accused and convicted of harassing and defaming her knowingly, saying that she was a man in a coordinated effort. And this is France, and we're talking about a country that has specific laws
have free speech there.
That they have free speech until it infringes on things like personal dignity as part of their reputation, privacy. And so that's what their law allows. And so if you're over there talking smack, saying in a coordinated effort and what they accuse them of, saying that she's a man and all this other stuff, well, then you got to be prepared to answer to the law of the land in your country. In the U.S., it's likely and 100% for the most part would not fly, but this wasn't the U.S.
Well, that's true, but I'm just saying the way we do it is better. It is better to have a permissive structure.
What about pleasant people online? This might deter people from being on my other, going back to my first thought of mine. I love pleasant. Don't you like, you said the other day, and I was so surprised to hear you say this, you were like, when people come at you online, because you have a lot of followers on X, and when people come at you online, you have to be strong-minded because it does kind of bother you sometimes. Yeah. Okay, wouldn't you prefer if people did not go to the depths of underground and dig to the deepest hole of the earth to come at you? You can just stay surface level.
I don't think our country would be better off if people were constrained by the law from behaving in that way, because it would also constrain them from, it constrains people from telling lies or harassing you or being bad, but it also constrains them for arriving at some truth that has been forbidden by the government. Oh, and I will add, by the way, Rachel Dolezal, I have a hot take there.
Oh, tell me.
Nothing wrong. I'm on her side.
I found Dolezal just completely comical in the fact that somebody brought up her name.
Why can't you associate with being a different race?
I was tickled. Let me tell you, I was a writer for Melissa Harris Perry at the time on MSNBC, who had her on as a guest and took your viewpoint. Like, well, if you want to fight for the people on NAACP, go for it. If you want to, she's fighting the good fight.
Accept, or liberals accept, conservatives don't accept it, but liberals accept that you can change your gender. Why can't you change your race?
She can also be a white lady fighting for the betterment of the
also just say
experience
she's a
of the
black
black
lady.
experience. I know she also could just be herself.
You see, I don't understand. It's incoherent to me that you could be a lady and say you're a man and now you're a man.
If you guys want us to
Can't
do
be
a
white and say
Dolezal
you're
segment,
black.
let us know in the comments and we'll continue this on.
The Department of Homeland Security is accusing Hilton hotels of refusing service to immigration enforcement agents in Minnesota. Now Hilton says it's removing the hotel in question from its chain.
In a post on Monday, the DHS shared screenshots of emails that were allegedly sent by workers at the hotel. One of the emails reads, quote, "We have noticed an influx of government reservations made today that have been for DHS. We are not allowing any ICE or immigration agents to stay at our property. If you are with DHS or immigration, let us know. We will have to cancel your reservation." This news comes as the Trump administration is deploying roughly 2,000 federal agents to the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. DHS Secretary Kristi Noem says the immigration crackdown is part of a larger investigation involving the allegations of rampant fraud throughout the area.
Conservative commentator Nick Sorter visited the hotel in question, which is a Hampton Inn in Minneapolis. In a post on X, he says, "Even the front desk manager said he'd spoken with the owner shortly before I walked in around 10:50 p.m. and confirmed the anti-DHS policy remained in effect." Hilton then put out a statement responding to Sorter's post saying, "We're taking immediate action to remove this hotel from our systems. Hilton is, and has always been, a welcoming place for all. We are also engaging with all of our franchises to reinforce the standards we hold them to across our system to help ensure this does not happen again." As expected, controversy ensued on social media. Some on the left praised the hotel workers, but on the right there was outrage and even calls for boycotting the hotel chain. Turning Point USA spokesman Andrew Colvett writes, "This is blatant discrimination against federal law enforcement that panders to the radical left while betraying American security."
But liberal commentator Brian Krasenstein says, quote, "I hope that more businesses follow suit and refuse service to government officials who are either breaking the law or doing morally reprehensible things." We talked about this earlier when you were saying about the service members that are in a conundrum when they're getting advice from people like Senator Mark Kelly to not comply with anything that's illegal. They didn't say morally reprehensible, and that's his opinion. But I think the service members are and everybody who's in, National Guard members are in a precarious situation because some of them are just following orders to go places like D.C. or waiting for the Supreme Court to rule on certain things, whether it's immigration enforcement or, trying to secure the area for crimes and bring crime down in certain areas. There's a back and forth, right? There's a back and forth about the legality of them being there. And so we know that Minneapolis, is a place that's pretty liberal. A lot of people there have voted. You see Tim Walz is at the helm of things. I mean, he was expected to easily win again as governor. And so I think a lot of people are have a personal opinion maybe about what DHS is doing and has done around the country, but that certainly should not spill over into business. And when I first saw this, because I have the travel series, I work a lot with hotel brands, and I understand that a lot of people are franchise owners of major entities within brands like Hilton or other big
This was not
properties.
Hilton doing
And so it's not
this.
Hilton doing this.
Has nothing to
So
do
people
with-
need to separate that and not attack
Conservatives needed
Hilton.
to take a break. They're all screaming at Hilton. Hilton had no idea this was going on.
You understand how this works. There's a lot of franchisees. There's a couple that are owned by the actual Hilton brand. Maybe. I don't even know if that's still the case. But in this case, it seems like the upper management made this decision with their whole chest to say, we're not housing you guys. And so I was wondering, was this an employee that was taking liberties? Because then that could lead into a fireable offense. I was wondering if this is a Hilton-owned property, and then the manager or the leadership there made this decision, and then they can be kind of excommunicated by Hilton. And that's what we see happen. Hilton was like, well, then you turn into another hotel. Turn into I don't know, something else, Ramada, because you can't be Hilton anymore.
Yeah.
Or anybody who's going to go for that.
Keep in mind that we've normalized the idea that you're not supposed to refuse service to anyone. In my, libertarian world, I say a private business.
The same people think that private businesses should refuse service to whoever they want that are complaining about this.
I think they should be able to reserve, but they're not. So then conservatives are saying, well, they can't refuse service to a gay the infamous
bakery, yes.
cake baking. They can't refuse service. So why do they get to refuse service to our law enforcement or what have you? Again, in my world, they should be able to refuse service for any reason, and I don't care. It's private business, can make private decisions, but that's not the world we live in, and so I understand the frustration. Now, I will say that law enforcement is a little different because of a little thing called the Third Amendment, the least well-remembered and discussed amendment.
Tell me what's in the Third Amendment, because
The quartering of troops. It is almost never comes up. Remember, that was one of our injustices against the British.
Yes.
The British troops were housed in American houses, and so they enshrined that in the Constitution that the government cannot do that, can't station people, require you to house people. I think that would come up here. If the hotel said we don't want to allow troops, and there was a lawsuit, I think it would be a Third Amendment case, actually, which never comes up. There's no Third Amendment law defense center.
We rarely ever talk about that amendment.
Not violated. It seems like it could be a Third Amendment issue.
Well, I'm of the mindset of just disagreeing. I thought this was wrong in general, just because you're in the hospitality business and you shouldn't punish people that actually.
Well, they can face market forces. It's obviously unpopular. People are going to be mad. Hilton quickly decided, no, that's not how we're operating. We don't ask questions about really, what your business
where you
is
work in order to let you stay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind
of. I mean, if it's something as incredibly illegal as going on, if you're using the hotel room for drug smuggling or, I don't know, actually prostitution probably comes up sometimes, because that's a hotel room thing that is illegal in a lot of states. They do look unfriendly toward that, but the actual law enforcement agents are not doing anything. They're there to do law enforcement. They're there to carry out immigration orders that are controversial and a lot of people don't like, but are.
But they also may be trying to protect themselves also as a hotel, because when you think about, and I disagree with their decision. I don't think that they should try to tell people that they can't stay there that work with the DHS. But I think when you look at the hotel and you think about how people have reacted to the sheer presence of the National Guard in cities around the country, and know that a large, let's say like 20 rooms were taken up or 50 rooms were taken up by National Guard members. You're seeing them in these military uniforms. If things get chaotic in Minnesota, like they possibly could, like they have around the country, and hopefully they do not, then you see them all kind of go back to the same hotel. It could create a disdain for the people that are, let's say, super liberal that might want to stay there. Maybe they just don't want to be involved in this contentious issue at the moment, but they just went about handling it the wrong way.
President Trump seemingly threatened to intervene in Iran if they shoot or violently kill peaceful protesters who are outraged by the country's ailing economy. The Truth Social post recently, Trump wrote, "If Iran shoots and violently kills peaceful protesters, which is their custom, the United States of America will come to their rescue. We are locked and loaded and ready to go."
Now, senior Iranian officials fired back, warning that U.S. intervention would spark regional chaos. Iranian parliament speaker said that Trump's threats makes, quote, all American bases and forces across the region legitimate targets in response to any possible adventurism.
Protests in the Islamic Republic have seemingly taken a violent turn, as at least 8 people have reportedly been killed so far. The protests erupted Sunday in the capital, Tehran, with crowds largely chanting about economic grievances after the country's currency hit a record low against the dollar.
Now, Tehran is still facing economic crisis after a 12-day war launched by Israel in June. Adding to the pressure, the United Nations in September reimposed sanctions on Iran over its atomic program. So the country is facing economic collapse and having some drama. I was trying to read about how the protests grew to what they are now. And I think the last straw for a lot of people and business owners was that their gas is subsidized. And then the country leaders just decided we're just going to start raising those prices to try to build revenue for only themselves. And so people are rightfully mad. But I think when you have a 12-day war that we joined forces with Israel in, and when you see what just happened in Venezuela, there's concern from Americans that say, okay, if they say they're going to target our bases, even if they don't successfully target our bases and just at least try to, any type of bomb or anything goes off, we now are in a conflict with Iran. Yes, like we have to do something about it. We can't just not respond. We can't just allow them to do whatever they want. And so people are really trying to figure out what's the plan here now that we've already continued to agitate over there and made it a point to join the side of Israel in this battle. Now we're ultimately part of, and they said they were at war with us, I think like a week ago. They said that they feel that they're in a war with us, even though we might not take that claim seriously. That's where the country feels they are with the
They
US.
can't do, right. They can harass our bases, our soldiers. They can't do anything to the homeland. Look, all sympathy, of course, to the protesters there. They are right. They are justified. I hope they succeed someday in toppling their authoritarian Islamic extremist government. The justification for Venezuela that's being presented by the administration is that Venezuela is culturally more like, it's part of the Americas. It is socially, culturally, religiously not so far afield as the Middle East. Like they're contrasting it, saying we can do this. Venezuela won't be like Iraq because it's a different place. Won't be like Afghanistan. Okay, but you can't make that argument for Iran. So what are we doing here? I would urge Trump saying, we're going to attack them too? We're going to be at war with everyone? Now what about no new wars? What about America first? Again, if it's a limited one-time thing for just Venezuela, because this is, okay, maybe you can sell me on that. I'm not sure I'm totally convinced. Maybe you can sell me on that. You can't sell me on us coming in and doing regime change in Iran. That's a neocon fantasy. Maybe that's an Israeli fantasy or Israeli government fantasy. What are we doing here? That is clearly violating the America First ethos and has maybe, unlike Venezuela, Venezuela might have a significant chance of success. I don't know how significant it is. An Iran thing does not have a significant chance of successfully bringing about a tolerant pro-Western American government. Let's be very realistic here. So cool your jets on this one is what I would say.
We have to go based off what's happened in the last few months, from the 12-day war to Hegseth recently saying Iran had their chance, and then saying that every adversary of the U.S. should, quote, remain on notice because they'll get anybody back anywhere, anytime. He said that we will protect anytime, anywhere. How is it our job to protect the citizens over there, specifically if the government is doing what President Trump noted they've always done? And not to say that's right or wrong, but as we continue to be the world police and say, oh, we're going to send troops on the ground, we're going to put who we want in charge. I mean, we've tried that. It's almost like insanity when you try to do something over and over again and expect different results. And so we're just in this limbo of...
Right. Policing our own hemisphere is one thing that is a ideology I can maybe grapple with or try to understand, but we can't just go back to the policing the world, Bush era thing that Trump ran on repudiating and was successful electorally for that reason. Breaking this morning, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz announced he would not be seeking reelection.
Now, Walz said in a statement, quote, I came to the conclusion that I can't give a political campaign my all. Every minute I spend defending my own political interests would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who prey on our differences. So I've decided to step out of the race and let others worry about the election while I focus on the work.
Walz had been under fire recently over welfare fraud scandal in his home state. He addressed that in his statement, writing in part, for the last several years, an organized group of criminals have sought to take advantage of our state's generosity, and even as we make progress in the fight against the fraudsters, we now see an organized group of political actors seeking to take advantage of the crisis.
Now, Walz had initially said he'd run for re-election back in September. Obviously, he changed his mind. You got your wish, Robbie.
I am thrilled at this outcome. I think this is the right thing to do. He he allowed to happen on his watch a massive welfare fraud scheme involving fraudulent nonprofits, feeding kids, healthcare nonprofits, daycare schemes, which got a lot of attention last week. We could debate, quibble with aspects of not all the claims had been vetted and verified, but even before that YouTube video, the Nick Shirley video that went so viral, it turns out that numerous daycares were already being investigated by the state authorities. Payments had not ceased, even to ones that had been closed down. So a lot has gone wrong there. I don't want to make it about racism or about demonizing any specific community. God knows there's far too much fraud in welfare in red states and blue states and among every class of human being, and it's bad. But Tim Walz's reaction to all of this, I did not believe for 1 second he had a sincere interest in fixing this corruption. He tried to make it, we're being so attacked and so persecuted that people have noticed this. I just think it was a bad response, and he was not a particularly impressive political candidate, and I can't believe he was Kamala Harris's choice for VP. But
now you're going on a rampage. I want to talk about at hand because you're kicking a man while he's down, which you're really good at. I think that we need to provide some grace for Tim Walz. Now, during the pandemic, there were a lot of people that, and federal regulations were relaxed in a way that a lot of people and abuse happened during the pandemic. Many people have already been prosecuted. So I'll give him that window when the pandemic was at its height and coming right off of that. But when he just responds to it in the way that he did now by putting some sort of task force together in December of 2025, and saying I'll take some fault for some things, but blames the federal government for other things. I don't think all of the entire year of 2025 or even 2024 should have passed without him doing something that was a bit more. I do think that a lot of states will see a lot of fraud continue to play out past how people took advantage of what was happening during the pandemic. And no, all the governors can't resign. People need to.
And again, he's not resigning.
Yes, he's not resigning. He's just not going to run again. But I think other governors should use this as an example and say, hey, okay, we're not just going to point out certain people or races, which he was smart to say. We're not going to attack the entire Somali community because something went wrong here. But we should respond quicker, even if it may stain our legacy in some way, because we understand that a lot of different states were taken advantage of during the pandemic. But what shouldn't happen is that years afterwards, it continues on. And so, I'm excited to hear about what Amy Klobuchar has to say, because the New York Times is reporting that she will put her name in the hat for governor. I think she's a pragmatic person that has worked across the aisle, really smart, and I think that she would have a great opportunity to lead Minnesota. So that would be an interesting, probably easy race for her to win. So I think that that's a good option that they have on their hands.
It's interesting. She wants to go from Senate to governor. If they go from Senate to governor, governor to senator, I don't know what's the more appealing to.
Well, don't you want people to have experience in the government when they go into different?
Oh, no, I was just talking about what she has presidential ambitions. She ran for president. She's going to settle for governor of Minnesota, but it's fine. I don't. She's done a lot that I don't agree with, but we can get into that at a.
But you like her better than Tim Walz.
I like her personally. I've actually lived, I won't say where, but in the same building as her in Washington, D.C.
So you guys rubbed elbows.
See her in the elevator, said hi to my little dogs. I don't bear her any personal ill will. I don't really bear Tim Walz any personal ill will either. He didn't bully me as a kid or something, but I don't think he's that politically talented, and it was a very odd choice for the vice presidency. Kick him while he's down. I mean, when he ceases to be a notable political figure, he can retire and not be. I think it's awful that some people apparently drive by his house and scream the R slur at him, and people shouldn't get a life. Don't do that. But it is fine and in fact good to criticize the kind of governance he presided over. In addition to everything else, the thing I hated about him from the beginning is that under his tenure in Minnesota, there was a COVID snitch line where you're supposed to report your neighbors for not following social distancing.
Tragic news out of Minneapolis yesterday. A woman, 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good, was shot and killed by an ICE officer in her car.
Now, the shooting quickly spawned dueling narratives from federal and local officials. Before we show the footage, do want to warn you, it may be disturbing to some viewers. Take a look at this bystander video of the shooting. Now, we did stop it right before the shots were fired. If you want to see the full version, it's all over social media. You see the car that Good was driving did back up and then abruptly pull forward. An ICE agent pulls his gun out at that point and then fires several shots into the car. Now, following the shooting, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem gave her agency's side of the story. We'll take a listen to that.
ICE officers and agents approached the vehicle of the individual in question, who was blocking the officers in with her vehicle. She refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him, and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots.
Trump echoed Noem on Truth Social. He wrote in part, "It's a horrible thing to watch. The woman screaming was obviously a professional agitator, and the woman driving the car was very disorderly, obstructing and resisting, then violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer who seems to have shot her in self-defense." He continued, "The reason these incidents are happening is because the radical left is threatening, assaulting, and targeting our law enforcement officers and ICE agents on a daily basis. They're just trying to do the job of making America safe."
But Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey wasn't having it and gave a strong, direct message to ICE.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of
Frey,
self-defense. Right? Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite.
Now, embattled Minnesota Governor Tim Walz took it a step further, threatening to call up the National Guard. Take a listen.
We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough. There's nothing more important than Minnesotan safety. I've issued a warning order to prepare the Minnesota National Guard. We have soldiers in training and prepared to be deployed if necessary. I remind you, a warning order is a heads up for folks.
Now, in the hours after the shooting, protesters took to the streets, both in Minneapolis and several other major cities, including LA, Chicago, New York, and Seattle. Many of those protests urging ICE to leave their cities and calling for the arrest of the officer who shot Good. Now, Michigan Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib echoing that call in a post on X, writing, ICE shot and killed a woman in Minneapolis today while she was trying to drive away from them. Her killer must be held accountable and brought to justice. We need this rogue agency out of our neighborhoods. Abolish ICE now.
But, on the other hand, Turning Point USA's Andrew Colvett, citing Secretary Noem in his own post, wrote in part, Secretary Kristi Noem says that just today there have been 4 ramming attacks on federal officers, 3 of which happened in Minneapolis. If you use your vehicle to impede, evade, or attack law enforcement, the consequences, however preventable, are your fault.
Back here in Washington, Democratic Representative Robin Kelly says she plans to introduce articles of impeachment against Noem in the wake of the shooting, calling the secretary an incompetent leader and a disgrace to democracy.
Lots to discuss here. I've been talking about this on social media since it happened, and just tons of reactions. I've watched the video over and over again. I think a lot of people have. Lots of expert opinions being offered from people who don't actually know how the law works. In case anyone's clear or hasn't seen it, I encourage you to go watch it on social media if you want to better understand it. Of course, be aware it is the shooting and death of a woman. So the cops tell her to get out of the car. The one tries to open the door. Mm-hmm. And then there's another in front of the car. And she backs up and then she shoots forward and he fires the shots. The one, not the one, it kind of, the way it looks like, video can be so deceptive. It looks like it's coming from the one on the side, but it's actually the one in front of the car. And you can see the bullet hole through the window shield that it's shot through the front of the car. She's killed. She, collides with the car crashes, and that's what happened. Very sad. The question is going to be, there's so many things you can say, but whether it is going to be ruled a justified shooting. And I think where it's going to be on the officer's side is that he's in front of the car. You can see the windshield, the bullet hole goes through the front windshield. And so they're going to say, well, even though he could have clearly gotten out of the way. He could have jumped out of the way and not been hit. He did not need to do this, but that's not going to be the question from the standpoint of the law. It's going to be, was it justified? Did he have a reasonable fear for his life as this car starts coming at him? And I think, in my view, the answer is clearly going to be yes.
I think when you have an incident like this with video, and obviously since the last decade, we've seen videos like this go viral, unfortunately, on social media, and then you have the court of public opinion that just decides how everything went. But the responsibility of the leadership on both sides of the aisle is to say, everybody kind of remain calm, we're going to review this and give you factual information. Mm-hmm. And what we saw was a lot of calling somebody a domestic terrorist and labeling this immediately, as opposed to thoroughly reviewing this and seeing under the law what exactly are the next steps. To me, from my purview, from the video that I saw, it doesn't look great for DHS because, like you said, it seems like the person was trying to drive off and not ram a police officer.
But you can't just drive off when the police
can't run away
take
from the police
car, right?
You also shouldn't be killed for that. Like, right? They could have shot the tire. There's many things that you can do.
No,
right?
But they don't shoot the tire.
Okay, but there are many other things you can do. It's like when somebody gets killed, you could have shot them in the leg. There are many things that you can do.
No.
You have to shoot somebody in the head. This woman was killed.
The police don't shoot you in the leg ever.
Okay.
That's not part of police.
Again, so we need to have a conversation about whether somebody needs to die because ICE is in neighborhoods doing policing for immigration.
If the police,
and so no matter of the stipulation of where police,
is an important piece of
so tell me what's the misinformation about? They can't shoot anywhere else but someone's head. That's what I want to know.
The police are if the police are shooting, they are shooting to neutralize a threat. They don't shoot to wound. They don't shoot to. People always say this, but it's not true. The police don't try to shoot you. They wouldn't aim a gun down.
So
it could hit the floor.
So police should always shoot to kill, and that's what they're trained to in this country.
If they're going to shoot, they are shooting
to kill.
That is the police training.
Okay,
that is the way.
That's terrible training. I'd like to review that and make sure that's accurate 100%.
No, it's not.
But if police are always trained to kill, it's absurd.
They're aiming for here. This is where they're aiming to shoot at because that's the highest likelihood of neutralizing the threat to them. They're not firing unless they fear for their life or the safety of people around them. If they're going to shoot at your leg, they could miss you. It's not like Jack Bauer or something on television where they're sharpshooters. They could hit the ground, it could ricochet, and it could hit somebody else.
Well, all I know is that Renee Macklin Good was a woman from Colorado that had a 6-year-old kid that's now dead. And that's the problem for me, more than whether the police training should shoot her somewhere else. I don't think that the woman should be dead. I don't think people should run away from the police or any body of authority, but I also don't think that that's a reason to kill somebody and shoot them in the head. And I think that we have to ask ourselves, is this what ICE was meant to do as we're deploying and moving troops or moving National Guard members forward, and asking ourselves, is this providing the safety that we're looking for in our communities? I mean, there's people like Joe Rogan having this conversation about, okay, yes, please, most of the country agrees that criminal migrants should get out of the country and be deported. But when we have multiple incidents like this, and this is, according to AP, the 5th death that's occurred in regards to a back and forth with an ICE officer and a civilian, or somebody who was international and moved here, or local, but still a death, is this what we wanted from immigration reform? So yes, President Trump has moved the needle forward in regards to reform, but no, is this the way that people wanted American citizens to die? I would say most people would say this is not what we wanted.
I think the situation calls for, it is nuanced. It's going to need to be reviewed by relevant legal authorities for whether the very precise justification for the use of force was met. I frankly don't think it's helpful what Kristi Noem said or what Donald Trump said, which was not accurate, that he was not run over. Similarly, it was not accurate or helpful what Jacob Frey said, which is that it was self-defense. He starts swearing it's BS. It's get F ICE out. Like we don't know yet. We can't tell even from the footage. Cooler heads, more legal experts are going to review that, and it doesn't help to be worked up about it from our political leaders.